And now there will be new administrations in both Israel and the United States, a perfect time to debate how to move forward. To do that, I'm joined by Martin Indyk, a former U.S. ambassador to Israel and senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Hi, Martin. Welcome.
Avi.
Nedja Hijab is a senior fellow at the Institute for Palestinian Studies. Hi, Nedja. And Hussein Ibish is a senior fellow with the American Task Force on Palestine. I'm surrounded by senior fellows. Welcome, fellows. So earlier in this evening's broadcast, Robert Fisk, the author from Beirut, said on Al Jazeera, every time it looks like there's going to be a Democrat in the White House, the Arab world says, now we will finally have some movement on Israel-Palestine. And every time they are disappointed. Nedja, do you see any opening for change, which has been, of course, the slogan?
Well, there's perhaps going to be a slight change in discourse and a change in nuance, but I think there's a very narrow margin for maneuver for any president or any elected official unless he's pushed to move by a number of forces. And
okay, but before we get to the question of how to push,
right?
If Barack Obama wins this election tonight, are you one of those people who actually thinks that the dynamic is going to change? Because the campaign dynamic has been the same that we've always heard.
I think the dynamic will change somewhat because I think there will be more space to push.
Martin.
I think that after 7 years of determined neglect of the Palestinian issue by George Bush, the fact that he came around, even though ineffectively, to putting this issue as a priority in his last year, trying to get some kind of resolution and creation of a Palestinian state, has changed. No, but it's changed.
That's the last-minute conversion that most U.S. presidents.
But the important thing is that it creates a context for President Obama, who intends to make the Palestinian issue a priority, that George W. Bush was prepared to make it a priority in his last year, makes it easier for him to focus on it.
Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I think to some extent, definitely.
I'm actually still a little bit stalled on Martin saying that President Obama will make the Palestinian issue a priority. He couldn't say the word during the election campaign.
Well, there's a big difference between what you say when you're running to get elected, given the balance of power in the country with different constituencies, and what you do once you're responsible for foreign policy. I mean, I do agree with Mr. Indyk that there is an important transition between the change of heart in the Bush administration of the past year and a half, led by Secretary Rice, and whatever the next administration, probably Barack Obama, I should think at this point, would do. The key probably is prospects of success. So it's very important that the Bush administration says the right things to the incoming administration. There's every indication they're going to try to pass the baton. And second, hold on, the second thing, which is extremely important, is that there's some kind of momentum in addition to the stalled diplomatic track, which is stalled because of political effects, and that can be momentum in terms of development, aid, infrastructure building, which Salam Fayyad is trying to lead in the West Bank, and there I think that needs support.
You got to jump in this kind of conversation.
Yeah, well, you know, I think if Obama takes his lead, or if it is Obama takes his lead from Bush, it'll be a disaster because we have a situation where you have people living under occupation who are practically powerless, and you have the occupier who's extremely powerful. So. And we have the one constant of this occupation has been Israeli settlement of Palestinian land and limits to Palestinian movement. So if the next president isn't going to actually do something specific, then I think America should step back and let somebody else pick up the baton.
Let me explain what I mean, if I'm very quickly. What I mean is not copy the Bush administration's approach, but rather inherit a certain momentum. What I mean is that if the next administration looks at this situation and sees a stagnant quagmire with no reasonable prospect of success, they're probably going to be disinclined to put a lot of political.
So now we get to the question of how to push that Nedja raised initially. What is the strategy from within this country that could actually make this administration any different, given that on the campaign trail it's been the same?
Well, look, I think that what you're going to see is a push on two tracks, not one track. That if Obama becomes president, the one that he will pick up more quickly will be actually the Israeli-Syrian negotiations. But that will have a benefit for the Palestinian track. The Palestinian track for any president coming in is on the one hand will be a priority, but on the other hand it's not so simple to move on this front. Nadja talked about the settlers and the problem of settlements. That's true. And there may be a centre-right government rather than a centre-left government in Israel after the elections there, which become a problem. Plus, you know, you have a divided Palestinian polity. The Palestinians themselves have to get their act
It's
together.
significant that
success.
Obama, who made it central in his foreign policy during the campaign to talk to America's quote-unquote enemies, went to Israel and the occupied territories and refused to meet with Hamas. How does that bode for
He met with the Palestinians who are authorized to negotiate for the Palestinian National Movement, that is to say the PLO, which is, I think, the most important thing. But you know,
why is it the most important thing? You have a split Palestinian movement. You have
but he's not president. He wasn't president yet.
Hold on. Yeah, that's right. But more importantly, I mean, I do think it's possible that the Israeli-Syrian track might look more appealing because it might seem to be more doable, and that if you had a right-wing government, a Netanyahu-led government, for example, in Israel, they might push in that direction. But I think that would be a mistake because in the end, it's not going to solve any of the key strategic issues. And I don't know that it necessarily gets us closer on the Palestinian track. I think it's a dead end.
We're going to have to leave it there. If it's okay with you folks, I'm going to keep talking to these people because it's just getting interesting. But right now, I got to go back to David and Fida.